There are moments in history when an idea escapes its original purpose. It leaves the classroom. It leaves the therapist's office. It leaves the pages of a book. And suddenly, it becomes a movement. Not because it was proven beyond question, not because it represented the only truth, but because it found the perfect cultural moment. That's exactly what happened with family estrangement. And I have a name for the people who built careers feeding that movement. Vulture Therapists. Now, before anyone twists what I'm about to say, let me be perfectly clear. I believe in therapy. Therapy helped save my life. I've spent years in therapy. I've had an extraordinary therapist. Therapy gave me language. It gave me tools. It gave me hope. This isn't an attack on therapy. It's an attack on an industry that has discovered there is enormous money to be made convincing people that cutting off family is the highest form of healing. Because vultures don't create death, they simply profit from it. In 2015, psychologist Lindsay Gibson published a book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. For 5 years, it sat quietly on bookstore shelves. During those first 5 years, it sold roughly 73,000 copies. A respectable number, but hardly a cultural phenomenon. Then something happened that no publisher could have planned. COVID. The world shut down. Millions of people were isolated. Millions were frightened. Millions were lonely. Millions turned to social media looking for connection, meaning, and answers. On one corner of TikTok, BookTok, a young woman held up that book through tears. Her videos spread like wildfire. Then another, then another. Soon, thousands of creators were recommending the same book. The algorithm did what algorithms do. It rewarded emotion. It rewarded certainty. It rewarded outrage. It rewarded stories people couldn't stop sharing. The book exploded. Sales exploded. And the very same book that had spent 5 years sitting quietly on shelves suddenly became a New York Times bestseller. That isn't my opinion. That's what happened. Then came the interviews, the podcasts, the media appearances, the celebrity platforms, including Oprah. On her podcast about family estrangement, Oprah introduced Lindsay Gibson as someone who had become identified with the extraordinary rise in estrangement over the past several years. Think about that for a moment. One book, one viral cultural wave, one therapist, one algorithm, one celebrity platform. And suddenly, millions of people had a new lens through which to judge their families. Now, let me tell you why this matters to me. Because this isn't academic. This isn't theoretical. This is my life. My daughter became part of that world. She became part of a generation consuming endless content, telling them how to identify emotionally immature parents, how to recognize toxic parents, how to identify narcissistic parents, how to cut people off. And yes, sometimes those labels are absolutely accurate. Some parents are abusive. Some parents are dangerous. Some parents should never have access to the people they hurt. I will never argue otherwise. But here's the question nobody seems interested in asking anymore. Who decides? A therapist who has never met your mother? A best-selling author who has never sat in your living room? A 60-second TikTok video? an algorithm. When did those become the final authority on a human relationship? Because relationships are messy. Families are messy. Healing is messy. None of this fits neatly into a viral clip. What troubles me isn't that the people are learning about trauma. I'm grateful they are. What troubles me is that nuance has disappeared. The conversation has become frighteningly simple. If your mother disappointed you, cut her off. If your father failed you, cut him off. If your family isn't emotionally perfect, walk away. Block them, never look back. That's not therapy. That's branding. That's marketing. That's content. And content has one job: to keep you watching. The more emotionally charged the message, the more it spreads. The more it spreads, the more books sell. The more books sell, the more interviews happen. The more interviews happen, the more podcasts are booked. The more podcasts are booked, the more authority is created, until eventually an entire industry begins feeding itself. Publishers benefit. Algorithms benefit. Influencers benefit. Media companies benefit. Celebrity platforms benefit. Everyone benefits, except the families left standing in the wreckage, wondering how every disagreement became proof that love itself was counterfeit. Here's what I know. Healthy boundaries are real. Trauma is real. Abuse is real. Manipulation is real. And sometimes estrangement is the safest, healthiest decision a person can make. But I also know something else. Reconciliation almost never goes viral. Forgiveness doesn't trend. Complex conversations don't rack up millions of views. Repair isn't sexy. Healing takes years. Algorithms don't have patience. Markets don't reward patience. They reward certainty. They reward outrage. They reward division. And that should concern every one of us, especially therapists. Because the highest calling of therapy has never been to manufacture certainty. It has been to cultivate wisdom, to slow people down, to help them ask better questions, to help them distinguish between discomfort and danger, between disappointment and abuse, between imperfection and toxicity. That work is sacred, and it deserves better than becoming another online industry. I don't know Lindsay Gibson. This isn't about knowing her. It's about asking whether we've allowed a viral cultural movement to become more powerful than the complicated reality of family itself. Because families are complicated, children are complicated, healing is complicated, and anyone who tells you otherwise is probably selling something. I call them Vulture Therapists, not because they created every broken family, but because some have learned how to build successful careers circling families that are already bleeding. I refuse to believe that the highest goal of therapy is simply helping people leave. I believe the highest goal of therapy is helping people see clearly. Sometimes that clarity leads to separation. Sometimes it leads to boundaries. Sometimes it leads to reconciliation. But it should never begin with an algorithm. It should never end with a slogan. And it should never forget that behind every family tree are real human beings whose stories are almost always more complicated than a best-selling book could ever contain.